Thank you for clicking on this video. I hope you stick around and watch it to the end if you are concerned about losing your rights, your children's rights, your grandchildren's rights, and so on. In the course of human history, if we lose our rights right now, with the state of the surveillance state, we will never get them back, ever. And this is why, ever since 2012 when my son was born, I basically gave up my entire life to try and make sure that he'll have rights when he turns 18 years old. And right now, I think I might fail at that objective. I seriously do. My name is Jonathan Cross, and for over half of my life, people have been calling me JC. And that's why the channel's name is just Conspiracy, because we just wish to conspire to bring heaven down to earth. I've basically been studying law all of my life, but I'm not a licensed bar attorney, and I don't have a law degree from a law school. And I come here today to present to you, the jury, and ask you whose law is better, my law or their law? That's the question. Because if their law is better, I'm really afraid we don't have any rights anymore. Because we're going to have to get your help to uphold our rights. And I got a plan, but people got to stick with the story. They got to watch this. They have to know why they're doing what they're doing. And that's why I'm making the video this way. All dressed up nice in a suit. I'm going to present it real calm because most of the time when I present these videos, I'm wearing just whatever I have on. And I get emotional because I put myself in the emotions of the people that I'm presenting. With that out of the way, let's go ahead and get started and talk about the story that you're going to witness right here on YouTube. Now, the story, of course, has more characters than the 7 that I'm about to name, but these are the 7 that are really important for this part of the story. And the first one is Joni, who I might call Oracle sometimes. She is the daughter of a man and a woman, and the man's name is Henry Ramo, who I may call Baba, which means father, and the woman is Josephine Coca. And that is Henry's ex-wife, and I call her Jojo because that's kind of her nickname, and her email address is Jojo the Clown. She had an attorney at the beginning of this. His name is Tyler Ray. He is now the high clerk, and now her attorney is Ryan Bradley. So Ryan Bradley will be the one that you actually hear in the audios. Now, Josephine and Baba, well, really Baba, created common law trust back in 2005 to protect all of his property. And we know this because his property has been protected until up here recently, except for what Josephine stole. And so the trustee, the individual who signed all of the checks, his name is Michael Probert. So he is another big character in this story. Now, Fritz Mercer is the judicial officer that North Carolina sent to Hendersonville to take care of this little situation. And we've had some history with the judicial officers in North Carolina because 4 years ago they locked me and Henry up completely unlawfully, and so we wrote to every single one of them. They should know who we are. Absolutely every single one in the state. Let me tell you what happened. So Henry creates these trusts to protect his assets for his children and his posterity. And then in 2013, Jojo steals absolutely everything and leaves the house. Leaves Henry absolutely destitute. His house goes into foreclosure because nobody's signing the checks on behalf of the trust that owns it. and the attorneys can't do anything. Henry's attorney put it in an August 12th motion saying, hey, we have offers on this property. Henry has signed for it. Josephine refuses to. Hey, they could take care of this with the money that's up in trust in New York because it's enough money to satisfy the note, satisfy the mortgage. If we could just get the court to order that they do something about it. And in that motion, it even talks about how they can't do anything without JoJo and Henry agreeing because it's an irrevocable trust. It has to have everybody's consent to be able to revoke the trust and divide everything up. And when Joni and Baba went to go talk to an attorney about this, the attorney, instead of filing a trust fraud action, the attorney filed an action for equitable distribution, as if they owned all of the property and never put it into a trust. But in order for them to equitably distribute the trust property, because Henry and Josephine do not own the property, it is owned by a person called Thomas Road Real Estate Enterprises, or 7707 164th Street Trust, 164th Street Trust, or Dad's Auto Enterprises, things of that nature. Various different names for all the different assets. And just like somebody can't just come and take your property without it being theft, the court can't just go and take the trust property. Not in law. Alright, now that we know all of the players, let's talk about what happened. Back in 2005, Henry created a bunch of different trusts to put his assets in. Over here, you can see the various different properties that Henry and Josephine quitclaimed their deed to so that it would go into the trust. They were placing those properties into the trust. Now, when a trust is holding property, it is a legal person. And just like I can't come and take your stuff, and you can't just come and take my stuff without there being repercussions in law, nobody can just take property away from the trust or give it to one party or another. The property in the trust has to be managed the way that the trust has dictated for that property to be managed. Now Henry, with all these different trusts that he has named as defendants in his initial suit, back in 2013, April, JoJo stole everything out of the house, took all of the trust documents. She had all the trustees working for her, doing what she wished to do. And so Henry and Joni went and spoke to an attorney, and that attorney filed the original action for him. But instead of making it a trust fraud action, the attorney made it an action for equitable distribution so that the property would be evenly distributed, but they had to dissolve all of the trust in order to do this. And of course, to dissolve the trust, you have to get consent from all of the parties. You have to get Henry's consent, JoJo's consent, all of the trustees, which I'm sure the trustees would have done it. But Henry and JoJo, Baba and JoJo, they never seem to be able to agree because JoJo wants everything for her and to leave Henry with nothing. And how do we know this? Because that's exactly what she did. She left him with nothing. Henry has been living with his family, who are also beneficiaries of the trust, for the past 9 years. 9 years. Now, about a week before August 9th, which is the court date that we're going to talk about, August 9th and August 10th, Joni got a letter in the mail. It wasn't from the attorney on the opposing side. It didn't have a motion in it. It was just a letter from the clerk's office saying, hey, there's a court date at this day at this time. It's not the clerk's job to send that letter. The only reason I could imagine that letter was ever sent was because somebody down at the clerk's office heard about what was going on in the office, and they have a heart, and they wish for Joni and Baba to have a chance. So they mailed that out in hopes that maybe they could do something to protect their property. To this day, we still can't find a motion in the record that was filed for what this hearing was about. There was no supporting affidavit. There was nothing sent to Joni or Baba saying that this is what we're going to be talking about. We had no clue why the court was being held. But Joni got the letter, and she came down so we could work on it together.
It was sent to the house in the mailbox today.
Wow. Henderson County District Court Civil Calendar, August 9, 2022, Courtroom 3. Who's that? Fritz Mercer? Fritz Mercer. There's Henry's name. Henry versus Josephine. Henry versus Josephine. Yes. So, years ago when I first kind of started being active again back on Just Conspiracy, it was all because I got arrested with Baba just for helping him stand up and say, that woman's not my attorney. We got arrested for that. And what was that, 4 years ago? So for 4.5 years, we haven't been able to get a court of law. But the wrongdoer, the person who commits trust fraud, well, they can open up the court and drag Henry in, no problem. Does that make sense?
Makes no sense to me.
And the only way a court of law is going to show up is if you show up. Now, for the sake of time, I've chopped up the audio, but all of this audio comes from the last at least 4 videos that I did. And there's some more audio and a couple of videos before that where I'm talking about Joni getting arrested. Now, before we go into court on August 9th, we go up to the federal courthouse in Asheville, North Carolina, and we file a document saying, hey, we believe that they're going to violate our rights, throw us in jail, steal our property, and we're filing this with you just to put it on a record before it happens, because we have probable cause to believe these things. Now, right now, I have probable cause to believe that they've basically taken your right to access a court of law completely away. And unless you, the jury, find them guilty of that, our right to access a court of law is completely gone. And that's really, really dangerous, because the reason why JoJo has been able to rob Henry, rob Baba and his family so effectively is because she got away with all the stolen goods. She robbed them, and they have absolutely no finances to try and legally fight her with. No resources to go get an attorney. They're tens of thousands of dollars in debt. And if they can't go in there and stand on their own rights, then they don't have any. There's a maximum of law. He who does not exercise his rights has none. And that maximum of law does not say he who does not hire an attorney to exercise his rights has none. It says he who does not exercise his rights. So just by that, in law, an attorney cannot exercise your rights. And we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Anyways, the audio's kind of chopped up because I'm just wishing to prove what I wish for you to see. But if you wish to hear more of it, it's public record. You can go and watch some of the other YouTube videos. Just please keep in mind that I do give an emotional presentation sometime. And the first thing that you're going to hear is you're going to hear Bradley right off the jump, as soon as the court gets started on August 9th, tell Fritz Mercer, hey, this is the thing that I have the motion hearing for tomorrow at 2 o'clock, for Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And then you're going to hear Fritz Mercer tell Joni to shut up, sit down, and that she doesn't have the rights to a trial by jury. Not even when somebody steals your property, you don't have the rights to a trial by jury because you don't have any rights. You don't have the right to access a court of law, verify facts, put them on the record, present those before a jury, because basically we just don't have rights anymore. And then Fritz Mercer is going to yell at Joni talking about how he's not going to lose his bar license because he's letting her practice law. And I find that absolutely atrocious because back in 2020, November of 2020, the district attorney for that district, that very same district, got brought up on charges with the Bar Association for letting a child rapist walk with a misdemeanor and not telling the child who got raped or her family about it. And they didn't take his license, they suspended it, but then they stayed the suspension so that he could keep performing his job. So that he could keep allowing child rapists to walk. And if that's the type of society you wish to have and you wish to live in, I'll save you some time. You probably don't need to watch the rest of this video.
So just as a matter of that I was in Mission County Call scheduling for tomorrow at 2
Quiet. Just keep your mouth shut. Now go back and sit down. I'm not about to have them jerk my license because I let somebody who was not licensed practice as an attorney. There is no trial by jury in this matter. You keep saying that, it's not allowed, period. Zip, not a no.
But when you steal property,
No, no,
property was stolen.
no. Sit down or leave the courtroom, one or the other.
I'll be right back.
No, just leave the courtroom.
Stay out of the courtroom, sir.
Out,
May I leave?
out, out, out. Did you file this morning?
You said, did you file them this morning?
He heard me, he said yes.
I can't see you very well, sir.
I'm not very handsome, don't worry about it. Look here. Where did you get these pleadings? Where did you get this? Where did it come from?
It's in my heart. I'm filing it. I'm filing it. I want it to be into the court records.
Mr. Bradley, can you be back here on Wednesday?
Yes, sir.
What's
Wednesday,
2?
2 o'clock.
I'm gonna go through the file and go through your pleadings. I wanna give them a fair shot, although they're bizarre. And, we'll reconvene at 2 o'clock on Wednesday.
Tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
Can you read it for me, sir?
You can read it.
I can't see very well.
Well, you can, you did this stuff. You certainly can read it
Sir,
yourself.
I was getting some help.
This is Dad's, and I'll read it for him because he can't read. I, whose ex-wife JoJo, she calls herself JoJo, and other colluders stole everything I have, and they forced me to live with my children who are beneficiaries. And having the same benefit of the trust, Joni, me, will present our family interest before this very court.
Okay, what you just heard was Baba's testimony, was Baba's declaration, placed on the record through Joni because Baba cannot read or hear so well. Joni and Henry filed documents earlier that day saying that Baba cannot read or hear so well, with a note from his doctor at the VA hospital, along with a power of attorney for Joni. And Joni also filed a notice of appearance because she's a beneficiary of the trust along with her brothers, and they're stepping into the action because they have an interest in it. As a beneficiary, they have an interest in what happens to those trusts because it's part of their property. What happens? That's the property that they own, are those trusts. Because Henry set up the trust to make sure that the assets would be there for his posterity. Now, Joni is about to read a declaration, put it on the record. under the pains and penalty of perjury. Because in the Bible that the court asks you to swear on, there's a Mosaic law that says, let your yea mean yea and your nay mean nay. But do not swear by heaven nor hell. And just listen to the declaration and what she is accusing them of. And you let me know. Does this sound frivolous to you? Does this sound meritless? Does this sound absurd in law? I'd like to hear from you.
And on June 4th, on 2013, Action 13 CBD 867 is filed with this particular court for the purposes breach of fiduciary duty and possible constructive fraud, and now provable constructive fraud for all but Michael Probert. And this is under his declaration under penalty and perjury. We're always sworn to tell the truth. On June 4th of 2013, by good faith, a representation document asked for order and injunction to stop the constructive fraud of the trust. On June 4th of 2013, by good faith of representation, we seek for JoJo, which is Josephine, and the colluders to make and produce detailed accounts of all trust business, which they did not. On June 4th, by good faith of representation, we seek to fulfill with the trust again, to have those trusts restored. By good faith of representation, we seek what is just in law. June 4th, there was a temporary restraining order that was entered, but sadly, no other relief had been found, and the said order has not prevented the constructive fraud from continuing. On June 17th of 2013, Michael Probert, who was the protector of the trust, he did answer the complaint and motion to dismiss, which Mr. Vassily did enter into this court. But ignorance of the law is no excuse. However, it does appear to stop Michael Probert from moving forward with the fraud. But on July 9th of 2013, the first evidence and heavyweight for proof of intent and deceit is there was an issue of letter of trespass from Henderson County Sheriff's Department, right here, to keep the trust property away from us, the beneficiaries, and to keep us away from the trust property. We accuse JoJo, which is Josephine Ramo, and the colluders in collusion with malice, intent, deceit, fraud, forethought, and with a plan. On August 12th, there was a motion in good faith by representation states. Trust property is still in the trust of 164th Street Enterprises. That created the trust. Attorneys in court may administrate the written agreement of this man and Josephine and trust, but man and Josephine will never agree, and all trust breach fiduciary duty.
Is all of that included in this?
I don't believe so. I have this, I think I have a copy for you, and I certainly gave it to you.
Let's take a look at some of these things that Joni declared upon the record of the court. She talks about the good faith of representation of the attorney, what the attorney did that was good, where he got an injunction and a protective order to protect the assets of the trust from the constructive fraud that was happening. That was a really good thing to do, but because it was a temporary order, it only lasted a year. JoJo just waited Henry out, waited Baba out, and I'm sure that she has gone and stolen everything else from those accounts. But we can't know for sure until we can actually get a court of law that will order an accounting of what is in the trust property or send somebody to jail. Because another thing that Joni declared was that the attorney in good faith seeked for an order to have an accounting of the trust and the trust assets. Now, they've never gotten that accounting. 9 years later, they still don't have the accounting. And they absolutely have the right to it. Another thing that the representation did was they asked for what was fair and just in law. The problem is that they were moving an equitable distribution claim, because what would be fair and just in trust law would be the trust being restored to its natural state, as if the fraud never happened. And then she talks about trespass notices. All of the beneficiaries got trespass notices, which means they got a notice from the sheriff's department saying that if you go to your property, you will be arrested for criminal trespassing. And you might think that that was silly. But Gary Ramo got arrested for trespassing on his own property. And now he's having difficulty finding some place to rent because of it. Because whenever somebody breaks the law, it seems to impede on other people's lives. And then you heard Joni bring up the August 12th motion, where Henry was asking the court to do anything with the property, to make Josephine do anything with the property so that it doesn't just get wasted, it doesn't just get lost. He even signed for an offer from a camp that's right down the street from the property. They were willing to buy both of the properties, and Josephine absolutely refused. We have the contract where he initials right here. That'll be important in tomorrow's hearing.
Is all of that included in this?
I don't believe so. I have this, I think I have a copy for you, and I certainly gave it to this
Well, you're
gentleman.
certainly allowed to file that. You can file it, but I'm not going to listen to all of that.
Do you want to know why Fritz Mercer says that Joni and Baba can file whatever they want to file, but he's not going to listen to it? Here's the reason, is because they can file whatever they want to file, but unless they actually say it and verify it in a court of law, have the opposing counsel cross-examine them, or at least have the opportunity to cross-examine them, then it's not facts upon the record of the court. All it is hearsay. And if you don't believe me, here's a judge and an attorney telling you the same thing.
I'd like to introduce the evidence and not just people talking. I'd like to introduce sworn affidavits from other people.
I'm not going to consider the affidavits, sir. Those are hearsay.
Your Honor,
He just doesn't know what to say to that. They are hearsay. Here, affidavits are statements where you say what you'd say if you were called in court, but you don't. They don't need to take them. You need to call the witness if you want to do that. But he's going nowhere. This judge is already done with him, and rightfully so. She knows that. She gave him his chance. He just wasn't making any sense.
We accuse JoJo, which is Josephine Ramo, and the colluders in collusion with malice, intent, deceit, forethought, and with a plan. And then they went to this courthouse, to the Register of Deeds, took out 2 properties, forged, and they colluded, and through fraud, they took the property out of the name of the trust and sold. They sold the property.
Sold my property, yes.
I'm going to look through the file again and through the materials that have been submitted.
Please do so.
We'll be back here at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, sir. For tomorrow at 2 o'clock.
You just heard Oracle, Joni verify the trust fraud and the criminal fraud that JoJo did on the record of the court. They're not going to honor it because we don't have any court of law and they don't care about truth. But here's what happened, because Oracle was going kind of fast. She felt really threatened. Henry and JoJo, Baba and JoJo, on February 18 of 2005, they filed these 2 documents. One for the 1515 Fifth Avenue West, and the other for 293 Thomas Road. They placed them into the various trusts that Henry Baba had created. 4 days later, on February 22, they go back and they quit their claim to the 295 Thomas Road property, and they placed that in a different trust. And now that is trust property. It's not Henry's property. It's not Josephine's property. It's the property of the person of the trust that Henry created. So to just take something from that trust would be theft. Now, Lena, a trustee, and JoJo go in 2017, August 2nd and 3rd, and they file quitclaim deeds. Lena's filing as the trustee, saying, I'm a trustee and I'm quitting the claim. I'm giving this property to JoJo. That's fraud. It's called title fraud. Happens all the time here in America. And you tell me why, if somebody steals your Rolex or some jewelry and it comes up at a pawn shop, the cops will just go get it for you. You make a police report, they check on it, they go get it, bring it back to you. Why don't they do that with your real property? Because the legal society has decided you're probably not willing to pay to get your Rolex back. It's not the amount of money that you would pay would make it not worth it to an attorney. But to get your home back, to get your real property back, oh, you'd probably be willing to pay $50,000, $60,000, $70,000, wait a couple of years, go through a big, long civil litigation for the court to say, obviously that was your property, you can have it back. Thanks for giving us all this money. That's the way the state statutory system works. They didn't take away your right, but they said for you to exercise your right, you gotta hop on one foot, pat your head, rub your belly, and then say the 3 magic words at just the right time after you filed all the absolute correct paperwork, and then we'll maybe think about upholding your rights. Because that's the only reason you would go pay an attorney $50,000 to get what is rightfully yours. And that's why you don't have rights. Now, in 2018, less than a year after Lena quit claiming the deed to Josephine committing trust fraud, Josephine sells the 293 Thomas Road property to Trimline Builders. That is criminal fraud because she took money for property that wasn't hers. And by all rights, the property should be returned to the trust. That is the way that the law works. That is the way that the law works. But you can't do that when you can't find a court of law, because Oracle, Baba, and Baba's sons, Oracle's brothers, everybody wrote to the district attorney and said, hey, somebody stole our property. Here's all the proof. Here's all the evidence that not only did they steal it, they sold it too, which makes it criminal. We require you to prosecute the case because attorneys, civil attorneys, can't prosecute criminal actions. And because there's no law, they were like, nope, we're not going to prosecute the case. You don't get the right to access a court of law because we're helping JoJo commit fraud against you and your entire family. We're helping her. And the next day, Henry and Oracle, Baba and Joni go back to court. And before you start listening to that, let me just bring up in the judicial canons for North Carolina, Canon 3, Section A, Point 4, it says that the judicial officer should afford any person with an interest the right to be heard. And that right to be heard means you have a right to place facts upon the record of the court.
Are you saying that I don't have
I
access?
say you have to sit back with the other people. I've told you 3 times.
I'm going to be with my father here today,
No, you're
just
not.
like yesterday.
No, you're
I
not.
will not leave him alone to possibly be arrested like last time.
Sheriff, you don't go behind bars. I'm going to hold you in summary contempt.
I'm not going behind the bar. I will not leave my father here exposed to be alone here in this court, because he has been that way for 9 years, 4 months, and 9 days. I will not do that.
I'm holding you in summary contempt of court, but you have to say.
What for?
I'm holding you in summary contempt of court. You're in custody.
Don't do that. That's my daughter. She's here to help me. I need her to tell you what happened in all the years that my ex-wife stole my money.
It's 24 hours in custody this year.
Excuse me? Judge, will you repeat that?
It's 24 hours in custody of the sheriff of Henderson County. It could be 30 days.
For who?
Not for you.
My daughter?
Yes.
Oh, God, yes.
I agree.
Listen, that's my daughter. I need
Mr.
her.
Raymond, let me tell you something. I gave her a lot of opportunity to be heard the other day. I explained. She doesn't want to hear anything that she doesn't want to hear. And I think that's been a part of the problem for the last number of years.
I'm exerting my right to a trial by jury, and we will stay and stand for a trial by jury.
Yes.
Not a judicial officer, a trial by jury.
Be careful with it.
I'm trying my best.
Yeah, of course.
Courtroom, please.
I'm getting a little annoyed here.
I know, sir.
Can someone come get my pocketbook? I don't want to go into it. I have it. Would you do that, please?
Right here, the phone.
I don't want my pocketbook now. Shall we do it with them?
What?
Shall we do it with them?
We gotta go back.
I wanna go with her.
No, sir. You can't go back.
Then don't do that to her.
She did it to herself.
She did not. She's here as my daughter. She's my flesh and blood.
Sit down. Sit down. Let the record reflect that I've spent 2 days looking over the file. There have been at least 6 attorneys and competent attorneys. One of them I consider one of the best
They're
investigators.
doing that. The attorneys are in there.
Just be
Otherwise, you would
quiet.
have helped me at the
Mr.
beginning.
Ramos, please sit down. 2 of whom have become district court judges. 1 has become the clerk of court. All very, very competent attorneys have had to bail out of this case,
So,
not try to resolve the case. And on
I'm not
Tuesday,
understanding what
I
you're
guess it was
saying.
Tuesday, at the last minute, I received voluminous pleadings on a 2013 case on what is often referred to, the pleadings appear to be what is often referred to as Cherokee Nation, Freeman, or Sovereign Nation. They bear no resemblance
What
to
is that?
anything in the courts that I have dealt with.
Could you tell me what you mean, what you're saying, guys?
Put your
I
left hand on the
need to be
Bible, raise your right.
represented. My daughter is
Your
my
daughter,
blood here.
she-
I need her. She's been with me all this time.
she's not an attorney. I explained that to her at length the other day.
Who needs an attorney? I need God.
If you don't understand that what you just heard is a violation of law, I just don't think I have any more words to describe it for you. Joni got arrested because they couldn't allow her to be in there presenting her interest in the trust case, because she would have gotten facts put on the record, and they know this because she verified them the day before on August 9th. They knew what facts she was going to put on the record. There was absolutely no doubt. No doubt about it. And Fritz Mercer is calling all of their paperwork frivolous. Literally what they did was they just rewrote it in Henry's words and changed equitable distribution to trust fraud. That's it. That's all they did. And Fritz talks about how attorneys had to bail out on this. 2 attorneys that became district court judges and 1 that became the high clerk, Tyler Ray, which was Josephine's attorney, JoJo's attorney. Do you think they have an interest in covering this up and taking away all of Henry's rights? Maybe. Just possibly. Do you think that could be a possibility with all these different people involved? And when Henry's testifying, I'm going to put up some of the stuff that he's talking about here, some of his pleadings, and a lot of the pleadings that are outside of the action that they amended and just converted it from equitable distribution into trust fraud. Outside of that action, what Joni said yesterday on the 9th is basically the whole thing. Here's Baba's suit, point 17. April 1, 2013, woman called 911 asking the police to arrest man for no good reason or cause. Police arrived and man was not arrested. April 3, 2013, woman unsuccessfully attempted to have man involuntarily committed. Man believes and alleges upon this belief that woman did these things to get him out of way so she could take the trust assets and leave North Carolina. That sounds real frivolous to me. And this is the danger. This is how you're going to lose all of your rights, is because they're going to say, if you're not an attorney, you can't file anything. You can't do anything. You don't know how to, because everything you think and you do is stupid for some reason. That's what they think. That's what people like Fritz Mercer, and Ryan Bradley, Tyler Ray, Thomas McAvoy Britton, that's what they think. They think that you are dumb and you're too dumb to understand law. You're too dumb to understand what's on your heart. You're too dumb to know right from wrong. Which is probably why you're never going to figure out how much wrong they do to you. See, I don't think that. I think you're beautiful and intelligent. And if you think that the writings are kind of crazy because we're calling Baba man and JoJo woman, that's how the attorney wrote it up in the original suit. You'll see it in his suit too. Probably see it behind me right now. This is scary, scary stuff. And Henry says, who needs an attorney? I need God. I told you we'd get to that point right there. See, a turn, like just the word attorn, not with the EY, just a turn. A turn means to hand over homage or service to one Lord, from one Lord to another. Okay, that's what the word turn means. The suffix EY means characterized by, acting as. That's what an attorney does. They hand you over from the creator of the universe, the only one true sovereign, to Lord Judge of the state. That's what happens. And people have given me some grief about this graphic. This woman over here is Elaine Brendehoff, who was Amber Heard's attorney, holding up the makeup that wasn't even out when Amber Heard alleged that she covered her bruises up with it. That particular brand of makeup was not even in existence in reality. And over on this side, I don't know this prosecutor's name, but this is the prosecutor who was prosecuting Kyle Rittenhouse. He pointed that AR-15 at the jury because they're too stupid. Figured that it would be impactful. They're too stupid to feel threatened. And I want them to feel threatened so that they'll convict Kyle for defending himself. This is the world we're living in. This is the world we're living in. So, yeah, Henry is saying, I gotta have the Creator's law. I gotta have the one true sovereign's law.
It was my home, if that's what you're referring to,
Okay.
395 Thomas Road.
And when did you and your ex-husband acquire that home?
19, hold it, I need to recall it because I'm a little nervous.
It's okay. What happened with that piece of property?
It went into foreclosure because Mr. Ramo did not pay the bank.
Okay.
And I got upset because, can I reiterate?
Okay.
Because I received a letter from the bank stating that it was going into foreclosure. So there was a phone number and everything, all that was there. And so I called up and I said, how can you do that to me? I said, I don't have that property. And he said to me, I can't talk to you. Your signature is not on the note and Mr. Ramo owes it. I said, yeah, but I own the property. So how can you do that? And he says, well, we can't, because he took a note, you're married to him. And everybody who's married to another person, they're liable for it.
You just heard Josephine kind of stutter, get nervous. I'm sorry, I'm nervous. She couldn't remember the year her and Henry bought a house. But then he asked her what happened to that house, and she remembers like every little detail. As if she just made it up, in my opinion. Because it didn't actually happen, and we know that because of the motion that was filed on August 12th, asking the courts to get rid of the property so they could save something that Henry has already signed. They can't do anything with the trust unless they both agree.
About Mr. Ramos wasting away of marital property.
Would you repeat that?
Have you had concerns since this case has gone on of Mr. Ramos wasting away marital property? For example, the Thomas Road house.
Of course he did it.
But obviously it's all Henry's fault that everything's gone.
Of course he did it. Yes, and of course I've had problems. That's why I acquired an attorney who was a very good attorney and is now the clerk of courts. And he's been helping me along until he recommended you.
So,
did you hear that? The high clerk has been helping me all along. Tyler Ray, the high clerk, has been helping me all along until he recommended you, Bradley. And now I want all of that money that I'm stealing from my husband, from my ex-husband, from the man who earned it all.
Clerk of courts. And he's been helping me all along.
Helping me all along.
are you asking this court to distribute the monies from the New York attorney's account on an interim basis to you? And are you asking, obviously you realize there are more issues to be resolved in the big picture in this case, and so there'll be a more comprehensive hearing in the future, and you are compliant with maintaining one half of that amount so that it isn't wasted away until a final hearing. Is that the case?
Yes, sir.
Okay. For now, Judge, those are my questions.
Mr. Ramos, I'm allowing you to ask her questions. You're allowed to testify. You can testify anything you so desire, but if you want to ask her any questions at this time.
Ask a question?
You're not required to, but if you have any, you're allowed to do that. And
Yeah, I have questions.
you're also allowed to testify if you so desire.
Okay,
Did you hear Fritz Mercer? You're allowed to ask questions. I'm going to allow you to say something. I'm going to allow you to ask questions. And Henry is obviously confused. He doesn't really know what's going on. He actually starts testifying, rebutting her testimony. But Fritz is going to allow him, because that's what they think they're doing. They think they're allowing you to do whatever they want you to do. They're giving you permission as if you do not have rights that were granted to you by a creator. As if the government is the grantor of your rights. And if the government's the grantor of your rights, you better be careful, because they don't have such a good track record with that. They don't have such a good history when they become the grantor of people's rights. And now Henry's going to ask her a couple of questions. He's going to ask her about Michael Probert and the checkbook. Because if Michael Probert was the one who wasn't signing the checks and he's the one responsible, then it's not Henry's fault that the 295 house was foreclosed on. And when Michael Probert filed his answer with the court, Josephine's attorney signs for taking the checkbook, but not on behalf of the trust, on behalf of Josephine, on behalf of JoJo.
who was it we gave the checkbook to that was the signer of the checks for the trust?
You gave it to a man named Michael Probert.
Mm-hmm.
And he was to you did everything, the two trustees, and he was supposed to oversee the two trustees and make sure that everything was okay. You did that.
What did he sign the checks for?
Objection, relevance.
That's a question, correct?
Yes.
I'll let him answer.
What did he sign the checks for?
Well, you wrote the checks out, and all his duty was to sign it and look at it and see what it was for. That's all his duty was, to make sure that it was for that particular reason you wanted it.
No, those checks were for what, expenses, mortgage?
I don't know,
Water?
you took care of it.
You have all the bills.
All my married life,
You have a,
excuse me, all my married life, you have been taking care of the monies and the bills.
If you have another question, ask it. Or if you want to testify at this time, you're entitled to do that.
Imagine that. For all of JoJo's married life, Henry took care of the finances. He took care of the bills. He took care of the payments. And they never had any problems for like 60 plus years while they were married. Not one problem with the bills getting paid, with the finances being there, with being able to take care of and support Henry's family. For the past 9 years, ever since JoJo stole the trust and all of the assets away from the family, now magically they have a bunch of problems. And Fritz, he takes advantage of Henry and how Henry's pretty confused, because Henry and the Ramo family, Baba, Joni and the Ramo family, they had it all figured out. They already came to an agreement. Joni was going to go into court and present the interest of the trust. She was going to be the one asking questions, putting facts on the record, going back and forth. JoJo has Mr. Bradley over there.
Of course he did it. Yes, and of course I've had problems. That's why I acquired an attorney who was a very good attorney and is now the clerk of courts. And he's been helping me a moment.
Why can't Henry have his daughter, who's a beneficiary of the trust, go in there, and she has full power of attorney. She has the full power to act on his behalf legally. But they can't let her do that. So while Mercer has Henry confused, he's like, don't ask her any more questions. You're making this difficult. Why don't you get up and rebut her testimony with your own testimony? Why don't you come tell your side of the story? So that we can confuse you some more, because nobody's going to be asking you directed questions. Nobody's going to be asking you leading questions. And I just wish for everybody to know, her attorney didn't put in any evidence. He didn't put in any record saying that they actually owned that house in their name at the time that it was foreclosed on. He doesn't put in any certified documents from the Registry of Deeds like we have, okay? Nothing. It's just her word that we know is a lie. Everybody in the courtroom knows it's a lie. And then Henry gets up, and here's what he testifies to. First he talks about Michael Probert, and then he sticks to the exact same story he's been saying for the past 9 years.
If you have another question, ask it. Or if you want to testify at this time, you're entitled to do that too.
I could testify with the question.
If you want to ask her questions, you may. You're also allowed to counter whatever she says by your testimony. You can take.
Oh, I could do that then, yes. Okay. So Michael Probert signed all the checks.
Wait a minute.
Oh.
That'd be sworn in.
Sworn in?
I have no redirect judge.
Okay. Come on down if you will. Stand and place your left hand on the Bible here. Okay, Mr. Raymond, just put your left hand on the Bible there.
I'm here with my heart and my hands are clean. I pray to God. I'm going to tell the truth, nothing but the truth, to help me God.
That's good enough.
My bad. I forgot about this part. Henry is so confused. Fritz tells him to put his hand on the Bible twice. And he goes, I promise to God, I'm going to tell the truth, the whole truth. So help me, God. God's gonna punish me, not you, because he's gonna be the one knowing I'm lying. Because Henry keeps it real with that Mosaic law. Let your yea mean yea and your nay mean nay.
What would you like to say about all this, Mr. Rhodes?
I want to say that I went to his house 3 times to get the checks back so I could pay the mortgage, and he said Josephine has the checks, and I have 2 of my sons that witness it. Michael had the checkbook. He was signing all the checks. I never had any checks. The checks were only signed at the end of the month when the bills came in, and I stacked them up and made the checks out to pay the bills, to satisfy the bills. April 2nd, I went to physical therapy, and I was gone for the morning. I left in the morning. Well, I will tell you about the night before when she called the police that I did nothing to her. And let you know, she called the police and tried to push me down the stairs. And she was to bumps me with her body. And then I said, I'll call the police. And she said, oh, that's a good idea. I'll call the police. Police came, didn't find us with any argument or anything. But the next day, so I left at 9 o'clock the next morning, April 2, 9 o'clock, came back, 1:30, 2 o'clock, she robbed my house. Assets were gone from the trust, 2 plastic containers that had jewelry and money changed in there. She also had that were in the pantry this high with envelopes with our money in it that we was more or less, I'd say, stashing away. And I had 2 compartments, one over her dressing room and one over my closet. One over my closet that I had stored. All I had to do was put take off the fascia board on both of those. And we had a lot of jewelry, money, and expensive things, watches, my watches and things of that nature. And I can't reiterate at present time what they were, but they were plentiful. And I want to know why Josephine confiscated all those things, left the house, oh gosh, a whole bunch of things. Now, if you would give me about a day to think about these things, I would reiterate everything that she did do. She took all those things out. She was trying to, she almost threw me under the bus, so to speak, about that. And then Massagee gets his hand in with the judge, the last judge, that he wanted money that I owed his father who had passed away, rest his soul. But I want to know why my ex-wife stole all that property and still has it today. I'll think about this maybe 9 years. I want to ask her, Josephine, why did you leave the house and take all those,
This is not the time you ask her questions.
yeah. Would that be all right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. Josephine, Coca, why did you leave the house?
Mr. Ramos, you can't ask her questions at this time.
I can?
Yes, sir.
What can I ask?
No, you cannot.
What can I ask you?
I don't think it's relevant to the proceedings anyway.
Why not? It's what you did.
It may or may not have been exactly what she did, but
What's the truth?
we're not talking about that.
What's the truth?
We're not talking about that. We're talking about a division of property here. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Mr. Ramo, come on down if you will.
What's the truth?
We're not talking about that.
There you go, you got it right from the horse's mouth. But it's the truth, why can't I talk about it? Why can't I ask her? It's the truth. We're not talking about that right now. We're not talking about the truth. See, you might have thought that this was a court of law, but it's not. It's a state court, and there is no law in state court anymore. So there's just no room for that thing that you like to call the truth. We're not talking about it. What we're talking about is equally dividing everything to JoJo, because she's had money all this time, obviously, from robbing you and your family, from robbing all of the assets from the trust. And she's really hurting without this money that's locked in a trust with third parties up in New York. She's really hurting while you're homeless.
What's the truth?
We're not talking about that.
What's the truth?
We're not talking about that.
What's the truth?
We're not talking about that.
We're not talking about the truth. It's not about the truth. It's about robbing you. It's about whatever we have to make up and say and put it on the record so that we have our own legal authority to commit trust fraud with you, to help JoJo commit trust fraud against you. That's what it's really about. And I guess if you can find facts and perjured testimony and no rights or justice doesn't exist anymore, and you absolutely have to be an attorney to walk into court and present your own interest in a case, then I guess the order that they sent to New York, for New York to take the money out of their trust account, out of Henry and Josephine's trust account, out of the Ramo family trust account, and send it all to Josephine, I guess that's completely legal. I guess so. But just think about it right now. If you're in agreement with this, then you believe that it's more criminal to go into a court for a case that you have interest in than to commit trust fraud, than to steal property, than to take other people's assets. And even if you don't believe that's the case, and you don't think that Joni should have gotten arrested, and you're still in agreement with everything else, then you believe that whoever goes and robs people first, whoever gets away with all of the money and gets away with all of the crimes and the criminal acts, that they should get help getting away with it, and that the people they did it to should get absolutely nothing because they live righteously and provide for people. This is the society that we live in right now. We live in a society that incentivizes the evildoers. It incentivizes the devils. It criticizes and expunges and arrests the angels. We live in a society where you get rewarded the darker you are. Where the more helpful you are, the more joy and light you try and bring to people, the more they put you up on a cross and crucify you. Is that the society that you wish to live in? If you think what happened here is okay, then I guess you're like, hey, the bank should have robbed more people in 2008. They should have robbed more people. And if you don't have rights without an attorney, just think about it. The next financial collapse that happens, because it's when it happens, not if it happens. The next time that happens, The bank's going to have plenty of lawyers, and you won't have any rights. Just a thought.
Mr. Bradley, get me an order ordering the attorney up in New York.
I object to that right now.
Yes, sir, I'll let you object.
Wholeheartedly. I reject, she's not getting a penny unless we discuss what's going on. Excuse me.
All right.
I need my daughter to tell me a little bit more, because she has some of the documents that she has, preparation, from the attorneys.
Get in touch with the attorney in New York. That money should be transferred from his trust account to your trust account. Make an interim distribution of half to your client, hold the other half to see what's going to come about.
And the worst part about the entire thing is after they were off the record, Baba goes, I don't understand what's happening. I don't understand the procedure. And Fritz says, that's okay.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the procedure, but, I'm sorry, I don't understand the procedure.
You don't have to understand how we're robbing you. You don't have to understand how we're taking everything from you. In fact, it's probably better that way, because then you won't figure it out to be able to come back and hold us accountable in any kind of way.
I'm sorry, I don't understand the procedure.
So, you've seen the presentation. Here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say Bradley started off from the beginning, saying 2 o'clock tomorrow, even though there was no notice sent. Joni and Baba had no clue why they were having court. Didn't even know that there was a motion until Wednesday. Had no clue what was going on. No clue what it was going to be about. And he said that at the very beginning of court. And then Fritz says it immediately when he starts talking about, well, we're going to do this on Wednesday at 2 o'clock. And then you saw what happened Wednesday, August the 10th at 2 o'clock. And while we were in there, they had Honest Abe. He is running to be a district court judicial officer in that district. And Fritz Mercer, in my opinion, and other witnesses said he was being groomed. Fritz Mercer told Honest Abe, that's how you deal with them. When people don't do what you want, you just throw them in jail. That's how you deal with them. I heard it. And when we saw Honest Abe coming out of there, and Joni Oracle confronted him, and she was like, well, why aren't you going to do your job? He goes, I am the only one kinda on your side.
Closest thing to someone on y'all's side, and if you want to act like that, that's...
Gee, you're not the one who made the decision, brother.
I will be.
Just understand the frustration.
Of course, I know. I share my... Closest thing to someone on y'all's side, and if you want to act like that, that's... I will be.
Frustration.
Of course, I know. I share my...
Bradley, Josephine's attorney, he didn't even cross-examine Henry. Henry, Baba just laid out all this testimony on the record of a court talking about how Bradley's client was committing trust fraud, how she committed theft, how she committed all of these crimes. And when Mercer asked Bradley if he wished to ask him any questions, Bradley was just like, no.
Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Do you have any questions?
No, sir.
Why do I want to ask him any questions? We've already worked this out in the back room. All I had to do was ask JoJo questions, get her to lie, and you're going to give me what I want. Why would I ask him any questions? Why would I rebut any of the truth? Any of it. In law, Henry should have absolutely had that hearing. And I don't even care that Joni got arrested, that Oracle got arrested. I don't care about everything that happened because Joni told Fritz Mercer about the August 12th motion in 2013. He had the file. He said he spent 2 days reviewing it. He should have known Josephine was lying by all the other documentation. And then he has Henry coming in there accusing her of crimes. The same thing he's been saying for the past 9 years, which he spent the last 2 days looking over by his own verified account.
And my daughter, she's got flesh and blood.
Sit down. Sit down. Let the record reflect that I've spent 2 days looking over the files. Let the record reflect that I've spent 2 days looking over the files.
This is the world we already live in. It's not that this is going to happen tomorrow. It's not that your rights are going to be gone tomorrow. Your rights are already gone. And if we don't do something to get them back, they're never coming back. And on that note, this is why I got to have your help, is because Oracle and I, we went up to the federal courthouse and told them 24 to 48 hours exactly what they were going to do to Joni, exactly how they were going to violate her rights. And within 7 days, the district court judge up there, the chief district court judge, threw out our case. That was frivolous. Our filing was meritless, baseless in law and fact. It was ridiculous. It was so absurd, we have to be sanctioned from being allowed to even access a court. He made a judgment against us that we couldn't even access a court because of how absurd it is to predict that judicial officers and state officials are going to violate your rights 24 to 48 hours before they do. And so we amended the action, put in a motion to amend and refile. It worked out pretty well because even though the chief judicial officer up there sent it up to the appellate court did exactly what I thought they would do in law. The reason I wrote that action that way, and they sent it back to the district court that same day. It had so much law in it that they sent it back to the district court that same day and implied that we had enough law and enough facts just in what we filed to move for a judgment as a matter of law. And now the district court hasn't done anything with it. And my guess is that they won't do anything with it until you get involved. Until you start watching and letting them know that you know what law is because God wrote it on your heart. And within these next videos, for the next month, I'm going to be explaining the entire story. And eventually, we're going to get to what that lawsuit says and what the evidence is. So if you could, please just like, share, subscribe. Watch it with your family. Talk about these things. They're important. The place you go to have your rights upheld in a civil society is a court of law as a party. And if you don't have the right to go there and present facts to place them upon the record of the court, then you don't have rights. It's that simple. And right now, we're already there. And if that doesn't concern you, if that doesn't concern people in society, then I guess they won't mind losing their rights so much, or their property, or their assets, or their finances, or their home, or their car, or their job, or anything else, to give it up to some dead fictional entity like the state, banks, corporations, whatever it is. Because if they're willing to go and rob an entire family to help a criminal get away with trust fraud, what do you think they're willing to do for the banks? Or the government? Or the state? We are just conspiracy, and we just wish to conspire to bring heaven down to earth. And if you're not conspiring to bring heaven down here, then you are actively conspiring, whether you know it or not, to bring hell up here. One world, love, and peace.
Sit
Judge, this is the matter that I was in Mitchell County Call scheduling for tomorrow at 2.
I'm gonna go through the file and go through your pleadings. I want to give them a fair shot, although they're bizarre. And, we'll reconvene at 2 o'clock on Wednesday. Is all of that included in this?
I don't believe so. I have this, I think I have a copy for you, and I certainly gave it to this
Well, you're
gentleman.
certainly allowed to file that. You can file it, but I'm not gonna listen to all of that. I'm
I
gonna,
made that
I'm gonna
focus.
look through the file again and through the materials that have been submitted.
Please do so.
We'll be back here at 2 o'clock tomorrow.
Yes, sir.
Did you file this morning?
He said, did you file them this morning?
He heard me. He said yes.
I can't see very well, sir.
I'm not very handsome. Don't worry about it. Look here.
I can't see very well, sir.
I'm not very handsome. Don't worry about it. Look here. You can read
See
it.
very well.
Well, you can, you did this stuff. You certainly can read it
Sure.
yourself.
I was getting some help. Sir,
Not try to resolve the case. And on
I don't
Tuesday,
understand what
I
you're
guess it was
saying.
Tuesday, at the last minute, I received Flynn or sovereign nation. Is there no resemblance
What
to
is that?
anything in the courts that I have dealt with?
Could you tell me what you mean, what you're saying, Judge?
If you have another question, ask it. Or if you want to testify at this time, you're entitled to do that too.
I could testify for the question?
If you want to ask her questions, you may. You're also allowed to counter whatever she says by your testimony. You can take.
Oh, I could do that then, yes, okay. So Michael Probert signs all the checks.
Wait a minute.
Oh,
That'd be sworn in.
sworn in.
I have no redirect judge.
Okay. Come on down if you will.
I want to ask her, Josephine, why did you leave the house and take all those,
Now, this is not the time we ask her questions.
yeah. Would that be all right?
No, sir.
Okay. Josephine, Coca, why did you leave the house?
Mr. Ramos,
Sir,
you can't ask her questions at this time.
I can?
No, sir.
What can I ask?
No, you cannot.
What can I ask you?
I don't think it's relevant to the proceedings anyway.
Why not? It's what you did.
It may or may not have been exactly what she did, but
It's the truth.
we're not talking about that.
It's
But
the truth.
we're not talking about that. We're talking about a division of property here. Do you have any questions?
No, sir.